All right, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about rounding numbers to the nearest 10 and 100. So don't forget to subscribe before you get started. And if you like it, definitely like and subscribe. We're going to have lots of lessons on here. So let's start exploring rounding numbers, okay? Rounding is like an estimate, right? When you don't need an exact number. And so here we're saying round to the nearest 10. So if I'm looking at the number 12, I know that I have 1, 10, and 2 ones. And so if it's telling me to round to the nearest 10, I want to look in the tens place, and I want to either underline that number or highlight that number, right, so that I know what I'm dealing with here. And so if I'm rounding to the nearest 10, the first one has to be 10, because there's one 10, so that would be 10. And what's the next 10? It would be 20. So 12 comes between 10 and 20. And I want to find basically which one it's closer to. All right, and so if I have my number line, right, 15 is the middle. And you're going to see that 5 is always the halfway mark between any of the numbers that we talk about. So people come up with, little rhymes about, if it's 5 or bigger, you round up, and if it's, lower than 5, so 1 through 4, then the number stays the same. Okay, so if we've done our tens, we've got our number line 10, 20. Now we want to look at the number to the right of it, right? This is going to be our deciding factor, the 2. We're going to look to see if that 2 is less than 5 or 5 or greater. And right now 2 is less than 5, right? So if we were to look at our number line again, 10, this would be 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And we come up with that little, rhyme, and we'll talk about that later, because you don't always want to draw out the whole number line because that's tedious. So it helps us, have a point. And if I were to say, where's 12 on the number line? Well, 12 is here, right? It's between this and it's lower than the 15. So it's closer to 10, right? So if we're rounding to the nearest 10 and we want to know if 12 is closer to 10 or 20, well, it's closer to 10, right? And that's all we're doing. So let's look at another one. All right, if we want to round 37 to the nearest 10, we want to highlight our 10 because that's what we're talking about. And we have 3 tens. So that means 30 will be on our number line. And what's the next 10? 40. The halfway mark is 35, right? So we're going to look at the number to the right, which is a 7. And we're going to ask ourselves, is 7 5 or greater, or is it less than 5, right? 7 is bigger than 5. And if we were to put 37 on the number line, right, this is 35, 36, 37. So is 37 closer to 30 or 40 on the number line, right? Visually, we can see that it is closer to 40. But we could also say to ourselves, okay, well, 7 is larger, so it would be towards the larger number. So it's rounded to the nearest 10, 37. Rounded is to the nearest 10 would be 40. All right, let's look at another one. Round to the nearest 10. So 81. So let's look at our tens, because that's what we're talking about. And we know that, okay, there's 8 tens, so that would be 80. That would be the first number on the number line. And the next 10 would be 90. And 85 would be our halfway point. So then we want to look at our deciding number, the decision maker. This is the decision maker. It's a 1. It's less than 5. So that means it's going to come on this side of the number line, right? And so it would come here, actually, right? 81. So is 81 closer to 80 or 90? That's what we're saying when we're rounding. And it's closer to 80, right? So as we're going through this video too, we want to be active thinkers. We want to be active learners. So you're not just waiting for me to say the answer. You're having a thought in your mind. And it's okay if the thought is wrong because you're thinking about it. You're making some decisions. And so, oh yeah, I don't know how she got that. So then you want to ask some questions, right? If something gets confusing. All right, let's look at the next one, okay? So we're rounding to the nearest 10. So again, maybe you're thinking, okay, she's going to highlight, oh, she's going to highlight the 5. Right. Okay, I'm highlighting the 5. Why am I highlighting the 5? Because we're talking about tens. So that tells me there's 5 tens, so that's 50. That's the first number on my number line. And the next 10 would be 60. So those are the only two choices I have when I'm rounding, is 50 or 60. 55 is my halfway point. And so I'm going to now look at my deciding number. It's a 7. We said 5 or greater, 5 or bigger, 5 or higher. It goes, we round up, right? We go to the next number. So, and if I were to look on the number line and put this here, right, 56, 57. So it's on this side of the number line. It is closer to 60, right? So if we round 57 to the closest 10, it would be 60, okay? All right, so let's see what happens when we start to talk about hundreds. So I have the number 139, all right? It's telling me now to round to the nearest 100. So I want to underline or highlight my 100, okay? At least in the beginning. So I know that, okay, the first number is 100. The next 100, if I'm counting by hundreds, would be 200, okay? And now I want to look to the number to the right, my neighbor, because that's going to be the deciding factor. I don't have to worry about the ones. That has nothing to do with it right now. So all I have to do, and so drawing that arrow helps you, laser focus in on what number is my deciding number. Well, it's this number. It's a 3. Well, a 3 is less than 5. So that means we would stay the same, right? And if we were to look at this on the number line, right, if this is 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, 150, right, this would be 30. So that's probably somewhere over here on the number line. Or if I just wanted to go on the 10, 130, it's definitely on this side of the number line. So, and again, as the numbers get bigger, you don't always want to be drawing out a number line, right? Because we want to be efficient and accurate. But these steps are good for when you're beginning because it really does give you a visual. So 139 rounded to the nearest 100, okay, is closer to 100. Okay, so this. All right, again, we're going to round to the nearest 100. So my number here is 362. Rounding to the nearest 100. So I look in my hundreds place. Okay, let me underline or highlight that. And I'm going to set up my number line right now. So 300 goes here. What's the next 100? Oh, it's 400, okay? And you don't even have to put this in here. I just have this here now. But as long as you know what your two choices are, 300 or 400, okay? So, and because there's the 5, right? So it's showing you if it's lower than 5, it's going to be on this side. If it's higher than 5, it's going to be on that side. So that's why we say the 5, okay? All right, so I looked at my hundreds, I have my 300, I have my 400. So now I want to look at the decision maker. So I draw my arrow because this is the only number right now that I have to focus on. I don't have to worry about this number. I just have to worry about this number. It's a 6. A 6 is greater than 5. So that means I'm going to round up, okay? So I'm going to go this way. All right, so 362 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 400, okay? So we're saying nearest 100, it's closer to 400. All right, let's look here. Again, we're rounding to the nearest 100. So 489. I want to say, okay, we're rounding to the hundreds, okay? All right, so that helps me say this is either 400 or 500. Now I want to look at my deciding number. That is the number to the right. This is my deciding factor. That is an 8. We said 5 or higher, we round up. So we're going to go to the higher number. So 489 rounded to the nearest 100 would be 500. Try a couple more. 716. So we're rounding to the nearest 100. I'll highlight my 100 or underline it. Okay, that means 700 is a choice. And next on the number line would be 800. Now I'm going to draw my arrow to the number to the right. This is my decision maker. It's a 1. A 1 is less than 5. So we're going to go with the smaller 100. And we're going to say that 716 is rounded to 700, to the nearest 100. It's closer to 700 on the number line. All right, and our last one together. All right, we're on to the nearest 100. So I underline or highlight 253. So rounding to the nearest 100, 200. That's the first one. What's the next 100? 300. All right, now I look at my deciding number, the decision maker. It's a 5. We said 5 or higher, we go with the higher 100 or the higher number, okay? So it's a 5, so we're going to round up. And so 253 will be rounded up to the closest 100 is 300. Okay? All right, so let's do a quick review, right? Rounding is an estimation. You can underline or highlight the number that's in the place that you need to round. You can draw the arrow to the place to the right. It's the decision maker. Remember, if the decision maker is 5 or more, go up to the next floor. So that's just a little rhyme that I put together. You can make a different rhyme, something that makes sense. Again, when you're trying to learn something, you want it to make sure that it makes sense to you. It could be, the greatest rhyme of all times, but if it doesn't make sense to you, you're not going to remember it. So you want to make that connection. You want to make a personal connection so that it makes sense to you. Okay? Rhymes are good. Little tricks are good to help your memory, right? But to make it meaningful to you is very important. And definitely in the beginning, start drawing that number line to help you, because it really helps you decide what your two choices are going to be. All right? All right, so your turn. We're going to try a couple. So while you do these problems, use the strategies we discussed, and don't forget to draw the number line, okay? You don't have to draw all these little lines in between. You can just draw the straight line here and here, so your hundreds, so you know which, two choices that you're talking about, your tens or your hundreds. So again, don't get carried away about all of these lines, because you're going to use that trick to help you, okay, with the 5 or higher. So on these two, you're going to round to the nearest 10. So 32, round to the nearest 10. 48, round to the nearest 10. And then on these two, you're going to round to the nearest 100. 962, round to the nearest 100. 572, round to the nearest 100. So right now is a good time to pause this video so you can get these done. And then when you're, finished, you can unpause it to see how you did and check your answers, okay? And again, do the work out so that you can see, oh, I wrote the wrong 10 down, or I wrote the wrong 100 down, or, oop, I just made a mistake. So that way you can ask the teacher some questions, if you are confused. All right, so let's go over your answers. All right, we said round to the nearest 10 on these. So hopefully you wrote down 32, you underlined or highlighted, you drew your arrow, okay? And so here I'm going to do is my number line. I can just go like this. And 40. Those are my two choices, right? Because 30 is the first choice, the next 10 would be 40. And now I'm looking at my decision maker, right? The number right next to it, it's a 2. So 2 is less than 5. So I'm going to stay the same. So 32 rounded to the nearest 10 is 30. Okay. All right, 48 rounded to the nearest 10. So 10, I'm looking at my tens place. That's it. 40. So I'd come over here and I would say, okay, my two choices are 40 and the next 10 up is 50. Okay, so now I'm going to take my little arrow and I'm going to move it over here. Okay, and my number 48. So I'm looking at, oops, switched around. Okay. Well, hopefully your arrow was nice and drawn out. You're looking at the 8. Okay, so the 8 is your deciding number, right? 8 is larger than 5, right? So you want to go up. So 50 should be your answer. Okay, 48 rounded to the nearest 10 is 50. All right, here, round to the nearest 100. All right, so I'm going to look at my hundreds place. It's a 9. Okay, then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to set up my number line. So 900 is my first 100. And then the next 100 would actually be 1,000, right? So now I'm going to look at the number here, 2. That's less than 5, right? So we're going to stay with the lower number. We're going to stay the same. So 926 rounded to the nearest 100 is 900. And round to the nearest 100 again, 572. I'm looking at the 5 because that's in the hundreds place. I'm setting up my number line. So 500 is the first 100. 600 is the next 100, right? I'm going to look at my deciding number, which is the 7. It's the one right next to it. 7 is larger than 5. So I'm going to round up. So we're going to go to the higher number, 600, okay? So 572 is rounded to the nearest 100 is 600. All right, so I hope that was helpful. Remember to like and subscribe. Much appreciated. And remember, keep practicing. You can do this. It'll get easier with time. I promise. Just don't give up on yourself. You've got this, okay? All right, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it helpful. And I'd love to hear, your positive comments and look forward to more. Okay, see you soon.